Welcome to the Big Book Roundtable and the RICO 12 family of recovery resources targeted at people from all backgrounds, faiths, and places dealing with addictions of all varieties. RICO 12 is also a resource for the loved ones of addicts. I'm Justin B., a child of an all-powerful and all-loving God and a multidisciplinary addict living in miraculous recovery, and am blessed to be the moderator of this roundtable. I'm joined today by David G., Nikki M, and Ashley S, and we're excited to be here today to read and swim through the Big Book with you. David, I'd like you to introduce yourself and then answer a quick question for us. What is the last new thing that you tried in your life?
Well, my name is David G. I am an alcoholic and an addict of many sorts from Oklahoma. Grateful for a recovery date of August 8th, 1994. And I guess the last new, is that what you said? The last new idea that I tried?
Yeah.
Well, it turns out that it was an old idea trying to put into it was kind of old wine tried to put into a new skin, and it just didn't work out too well. So therefore, I'm convinced that the new idea is much better than the old. So I don't know if that's an appropriate answer, but that's the one for me. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, David. Appreciate it. Nikki, your turn to introduce yourself and tell us one new thing that you've tried recently.
Hi, I'm Nikki M, and I'm just such a grateful member of many fellowships, probably too many to list. And the last new thing I tried is my new cell phone. Okay, so just so friends out there know, I don't have a computer. I don't have one of those pad things. I had an old iPhone. Well, my daughter, who's 31, just visited from California, and she said, "Mom, it's time." She took me to the mall. I have some 13 numbered iPhone, but you guys sound great today. And I'm just hoping I don't have to keep an ice pack on my phone. I'm just excited with this new toy because I do have a little fear surrounding technology. So I'm just grateful to be willing, honest, and open-minded towards this new tech stuff. Thanks, Justin.
Awesome. And you sound great, Nikki. Good to have you here today. Ashley, you're next to introduce yourself with the same question.
Hi, I'm Ashley S. I'm from North Carolina, recovered sex addict and codependent, grateful member of All Addicts Anonymous and Al-Anon. And I think the last new thing that I've tried, kind of in a similar vein to what Nikki was saying, is I have never grilled or smoked anything before, meat-wise, and that's something that I've taken up recently. So I've been enjoying some delicious food from trying that new skill.
Love it. Thank you each for introducing yourself. I'm excited to get into today's reading. We're going to continue our reading today from the Foreword to the second edition. We'll be starting on page xvii, that's Roman numeral 16, starting at the paragraph that starts with prior to his journey to Akron. And we will be reading through page xvii, that's Roman numeral 17 for you educated people out there. In the sentence or the paragraph that ends with the words, "the dark world of the alcoholic." All right, let's get into it. Prior to his journey to Akron, the broker had worked hard with many alcoholics on the theory that only an alcoholic could help an alcoholic, but he had succeeded in only keeping himself sober. The broker had gone to Akron on a business venture which had collapsed, leaving him greatly in fear that he might start drinking again. He suddenly realized that in order to save himself, he must carry his message to another alcoholic. That alcoholic turned out to be the Akron physician. This physician had repeatedly tried spiritual means to resolve his alcoholic dilemma, but had failed. But when the broker gave him Dr. Silkworth's description of alcoholism and its hopelessness, the physician began to pursue the spiritual remedy for his malady with a willingness he had never before been able to muster. He sobered, never to drink again up to the moment of his death in 1950. This seemed to prove that one alcoholic could affect another as no non-alcoholic could. It also indicated that strenuous work, one alcoholic with another, was vital to permanent recovery. Hence, the two men set to work almost frantically upon alcoholics arriving in the ward of the Akron City Hospital. Their very first case, a desperate one, recovered immediately and became AA number 3. He never had another drink. This work at Akron continued through the summer of 1935. There were many failures, but there was an occasional heartening success. When the broker returned to New York in the fall of 1935, the first AA group had actually been formed, though no one realized it at the time. A second small group promptly took shape at New York, to be followed in 1937 with the start of a third at Cleveland. Besides these, there were scattered alcoholics who had picked up the basic ideas in Akron or New York, who were trying to form groups in other cities. By late 1937, the number of members having substantial sobriety time behind them was sufficient to convince the membership that a new light had entered the dark world of the alcoholic. There's a lot there, and we're going to be just jet skiing over the top of this, but I really want to hit on some of these great points here. So let's jump into this a little bit, and let's start with you, David. As we read through that, what is some of your experience, strength, and hope, and some of your takeaways that you'd like to dive in on about what we just read?
Yeah, of course, Justin. And first, let me say thank you. Thank you for your service. And as always, it's good to see you and Ashley and Nikki. So good to be here with you ladies today. I love sitting at this round table and studying this book. Gosh, I was introduced to this early on, way back in the 90s. I can remember on the first page where you read, I mean, there was so much there in those first two sentences that talked about this book and a wholesale miracle. And I don't see any difference between the two. I know a revelatory experience is something that happens. It's just like a revolution. But in order to have action behind something, that's really what the miracle is. And there's a lot of action in this book. For years, I read the book and really didn't see a whole lot of depth and weight in these early pages. But I mean, we're talking about 150,000 recovered alcoholics that the membership was far above at that time. It talks about all of the groups and where they're to be found. I remember reading that, and I told my sponsor, I said, you told me that everything in the big book applied to me somehow, some way. How the hell does that apply to me, the British Isles, Scandinavian countries? And his answer was direct and simple. He just said, anywhere that you are in the world, there's no reason why you shouldn't be in a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous or whatever fellowship that you're a part of. Now, I was on a cruise in 2005. I'd just gotten married, and, we decided to go on a cruise. And on that cruise, they had a pamphlet with Friends of Bill W. And so here I am, in the Gulf of Mexico, with me, my wife, and one other person that showed up that was really struggling. So we were able to help. But there's so much here. I mean, if you look at the bottom of that page, this is how it all began. The spark that was to flare to the first AA group was struck in Akron, Ohio, that was June 10th of 1935. And of course, the stockbroker is Bill and the physician is Bob. And, it goes on to talk about Bill's experience with the sudden spiritual experience. But I love what you read there from this doctor talking about self-worth. The broker had learned the grave nature of alcoholism. I think until we dig into this book and we truly learn what the grave nature of alcoholism is, not that I just need to put a plug in the jug or whatever, put the fork down. I think we're talking about something much, much deeper here. And I love how the tenets of the Oxford group, which that word just means principles, there were 6 steps at that time. Bill changed that in the later years. It became 12. And so there's so much there, the bottom paragraph, and I'm just jet skiing over it, like you said, but the physician, repeatedly tried spiritual means to solve his dilemma, but it failed. Think of that in your own life. How many times you repeatedly tried spiritual means or some sort of means to resolve your dilemma, but failed. What Bill didn't understand at this time, that Dr. Bob was already a member of the Oxford group. He didn't need to school Dr. Bob in spirituality or religion. He already knew. But what Bob didn't know is once you put alcohol in the body, something that happens that makes it virtually impossible for guys like us to stop. He did not know the problem. I often look at this scene and see a New York stockbroker telling a doctor what's wrong with him, and the doctor taking the bait, and he ends up recovering. But for me, what is so important, and I'll end here because I want to hear these ladies, is at the very top of that next page. It says it also indicated that strenuous work, that's key words right there, strenuous work, one alcoholic with another was vital. That's another key word to permanent recovery, not permanent sobriety, permanent recovery from self. And that's what we'll begin to see as we move on. So, Justin, thank you for calling on me first. Really glad to be here today.
Thank you, David. All right. I'm doing a little aside here. Ashley pointed out something that when I was looking back at stuff, I just didn't catch this. We did cover that first page and a half of the second edition, forward to the second edition before. So, David, I'm grateful that you hit on the prior to his journey in Akron, and that little bit there down through entered the dark world of the alcoholic. I'm going to be pasting a couple things together here. I'll record something else at the beginning to get that in there. But what we're covering here, and I apologize, this is totally my bad for not digging into what we did last time. I just went down the list of what I had written previously. So we'll be starting at prior to his journey to Akron is where we'll start at, and going through what we read, the dark world of the alcoholic. So next up here is Nikki. So, okay, now I'm going to come back, and this is where we'll pick up. Sorry about that, everybody. One more
question. Do we want to finish with you reading? Where did we leave off? Did you finish reading To the Dark World of the Alcoholic?
Yeah, that's where I read too.
Okay, cool.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Thanks. And I'm going to stop beating myself up now, and we'll just move forward. Yep, we're good. We're good. Okay. So thank you, David. Nikki, tell us a little bit about what your takeaway from those paragraphs that we read were.
Well, I just keep learning more and more. And as David said, I am just excited to be here with all of you guys, because this is, I forget, I fall back asleep and forget how much I look forward to this. And what I love in the part that you read is that it says, the broker who, of course, as David said, is Bill W. I have to work hard with many addicts on the theory that only another addict can help another addict. That's it. Like, I'm beyond human aid. This book repeats itself. I mean, this chapter could be called a vision for you, because all these things are coming true for me. This is written for me, as was already stated. And then it says, I love this part where it says, he, that's me, Nikki. I suddenly every day realize that in order to save myself, I have to carry this message, not my message, but it's the undiluted Big Book message to another addict. My note here says that Nikki gets paid. See, I get my paycheck. Does everyone want to know what it is? It's a big fat freedom, peace of mind, lots of energy. You know, I'm going to be 50 soon, so I've got more energy than a teenager, because I get paid whether my newcomer, whether my prospect gets sober or not. And it's like here it says, many failures. You know, I've had many failures, many in fellowships with my sponsees. I'm sure my sponsors are like, Nikki's failing, what's going to happen? And then no one realized at the time, meaning my line out says God's plan. Like, it's all part of this plan. This is all laid out for me. So if I just know this book, the Big Book constantly repeats itself. And I just have to, the description of alcoholism. And I'm an advocate that we don't need so many different fellowships if we all really follow the directions of the Big Book, which says the description of alcoholism and its hopelessness, meaning that everyone is welcome. Again, the original long form tradition of number 3 says, everybody who suffers the disease of alcoholism. And some of us, I know probably, Ashley, you're like me. I don't have to pick up a drink to be a nut bar. I just have to pick up a thought. And so this disease but I look back and really, I don't realize it at the time, but God's plan, it's right here. AA group had actually been formed, though no one realized it. My life is being reformed. My fellowship, right? The 4 of us are going to look back and go, whoa, we formed this special time and helped many people just through talking about our magic book. Thank you.
Thanks, Nikki. I appreciate that. And I'm going to come back to this. The Big Book repeats itself to you here in a little bit when I have a follow-up, because I think there's some stuff that we can dig into. Ashley, tell us a little bit of your experience, strength, and hope in what we just read.
Thank you so much, Justin. Excellent shares, David and Nikki. I think they touched on all the highlights. There's just one other thing that kind of jumps out to me. As on that note of like the Big Book repeating itself, I kind of want to highlight 4 sentences. So that the broker had worked hard with many alcoholics on the theory that only an alcoholic could help an alcoholic. We'll jump down a couple paragraph, and it says, he suddenly realized that in order to save himself, he must carry his message to another alcoholic. On the next page, it says that strenuous work, one alcoholic with another, was vital to permanent recovery. Hence, the 2 men sent to work almost frantically with alcoholics. So if there's any question about what this program is. How I can get out of self is that I must carry this message from this book to another addict. And that's personally what I've found, when I'm struggling, when I've tried all the other methods that have failed, that is what will take me out of my own problems. And I can be present with the women that I help. And there was one other thing I was going to call out, that where it says that it was vital to permanent recovery. Somebody pointed out to me that it's kind of like when you're checking your vitals at a hospital. I mean, this is our life support. So that was the only other thing I wanted to touch on. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashley. Good stuff. I'm really enjoying the swimming through this, the diving into a few of these topics within what we're reading. And I've got a couple of questions that I pulled out of each of your shares that I'd like to dig a little bit further into. David, you and Ashley both hit on, the strenuous work and what it takes to, stay sober and to work with others. It takes strenuous work. We have the frantic, we have the strenuous, the work, these adjectives that are used in there. What does that strenuous work look like to you, David, on a day-to-day basis?
Thank you, Justin, for that question. I get asked that quite often, actually. And for me, it is setting down with someone one-on-one and reading through this book from beginning to end, not having them go read a couple of weeks or whatever and come back. Or for me, it's taking that strenuous work of me breaking down the big book the same way it was broken down for me, and taking time. When I take somebody through this process of the big book, I will read with them every single day until I get them to inventory, no matter what that looks like. Of course, you may have to miss a day here or there, depending on what's happening, but it is strenuous work. It really is. And it is work. I've been in meetings where people say, I don't like the word work in the big book. Well, too bad, because it's everywhere. It's all the way through here. I don't like to work either, but you know what? It's paid dividends. It really has. In that what you read as well, we see the very first group conscience that ever took place in Alcoholics Anonymous toward the bottom of that. Said it was now time the struggling groups thought to place their message and unique experience before the world. This determination bore fruit in the spring of 1939 by the publication keywords of this volume. The membership had then reached about 100 men and women. The fledgling society, which had been nameless, now began to be called Alcoholics Anonymous. And anyone that's listening to this, anyone that's reading this, these next 6 or 7 words are probably the most important on that page. It began to be called Alcoholics Anonymous from the title of its own book. The fellowship did not have a name prior to the book Alcoholics Anonymous. So as much as I love this fellowship, I don't ever want to put it before the book and the work in Alcoholics Anonymous. This is very strenuous work, one with another. And if we're not doing this, then, I'm not doing my part as it was taught to me. So anyway, I know I went a long way around that question, but thank you, Justin. Appreciate it.
Good stuff. And it's given some foreshadowing into the next episode that we'll be doing, and really powerful stuff. I love that idea of, I don't want to put the fellowship ahead of the message, the big book. I don't want to put that not confuse them. They work well hand in hand, but focus on what the core is. Love it. Thank you, David. All right, Nikki, you did, and I alluded to this. You mentioned that the big book repeats itself. Sometimes when I'm being arrogant, being myself, honestly, I often say, I've already heard that. I don't need to hear it again. And yet I need to hear it again because I'm a fast forgetter. Tell us a little bit about your experience with this, why the big book repeats itself, why things of meaning repeat themselves over and over in our lives. Why do we need that?
Well, because it centers in our mind. This is all a mind thing. It says it doesn't center in the bottle. The bottle's but a symptom. So are the other, the addictions I have. They're just a symptom. This is all in our thought life. So I need to think these things every night. I heard it in the rooms when I first came in, and it was like every night my ego's doing push-ups. Well, every night I just fall back asleep. I mean, I just wake up and I'm like, who am I? And it does constantly, like even this line here that we read on XVii, many failures, but there was occasional heartening successes. Well, that's page 30. Many pursue it into the gates of insanity or death. Hey, a few of us make it, right? And all a daily reprieve. It just keeps, it says the new light had entered the dark world. Well, it tells us later, a promise is, we enter a spirit world. It just keeps repeating it later and later. And there's another part I want to say that, suddenly realized. Well, it says in a promise, we suddenly realize that God is doing for us what we cannot do for ourselves. So it just keeps this is how it becomes a working part of our mind. I mean, people send me, on the previous page, and I want to hear what question Ashley gets. It's always fun. Who gets what question around these rounds? But, when it talks about like all these places around the world, I mean, we're sponsoring everywhere. We're around the world. This book is a magic book, but as was mentioned, I don't rely on it. I have to rely on this power of God. I forget I tapped a power greater than myself, and you guys remind me with those great American accents. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Nikki. Love it. And I'm excited about this next question too. I love so Ashley, you brought in a line from another part, or you referenced a line from the Big Book here that says, when all else fails, work with another alcoholic would save the day. Do you have an experience where you felt that all else was failing, and when you picked up the book, picked up the phone, went and met with somebody, it saved the day for you as well as anybody else?
Excellent question, Justin. Yep. And you already labeled off some of the methods I tried. Tried reading the book. I tried getting down on my knees, praying the third step prayer, tried going to a meeting, but that thought of lust kept returning. And so what else can I do but pick up the phone and work with another sponsee that I had? So it absolutely will save the day. It has for me every single time, because it's helping me to, again, get out of my own self and stuff that's going on, those thoughts, and I'm able to be present and focus on and listen to somebody else and help them.
Love it. And I've had those experiences in my own recovery too, where I was insane. I was losing my mind, and I had to get to work with somebody else. And it saves the day. I've never, when I work with somebody else in recovery, when I serve somebody else anywhere, I feel better. I get lifted as much. And, we often say that when I work with another person, another alcoholic, another addict, it helps me just as much, if not more, than it helps them. And I have experienced that big time. All right. Well, let's go into our little wrap up here. David, do you have any final thoughts on what we've read today, and wrapping that up in your words?
Well, Justin, I just, again, really appreciate you and all that you do. And I love sitting around this round table with these ladies. Love hearing experience, strength, and hope from the book. And, I can just say that, a lot of people tell me, David, this is just general information of Alcoholics Anonymous. I can guarantee you this applies to my life just as much as any other part of the book does. Hence, the two men set to work almost frantically. I guarantee you, if you're an alcoholic of my type and you're in the throes, what these ladies were talking about, there's going to be days come that you're not spiritually prepared. And when all else fails, you better be ready to do what the book is asked to do, or at least in my case, I know. There's so much history that we skipped over here. AA number 3 was a man by the name of Bill Dotson. He recovered immediately, never had another drink. There's just so much here. But if there's any one thing that I would say in wrapping this up, when you read the Big Book, it was explained to me to put it in the first person. I don't really care about a broker in 39 and a doctor. And that's all good information. But when the alligators are nipping at my tail, I need to know something about David. And what I've learned here is, if I will take and put this in, like it talked about, confession to those harmed, personality defects, necessity and belief and dependence upon God, work the steps as outlined in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. Do what it says to do. And, like they always told me, if it doesn't work, you can always have your misery back. But I've never been able to prove this book wrong, ever. You'll never hear me say anything against it. That doesn't, my experience has showed over and over and over for 29 years. Next week will be 29 years that this has absolutely worked, and it continues to work. And the one thing is, I don't need more God. I just need less David. And that's what I find here. So thank you, bud.
Awesome. Thank you, David. And one day at a time, happy birthday next week. Happy 29 years. How cool is that? Thanks for sharing a week before that with us. All right. Nikki, a little wrap up from you. What are your final takeaways from this?
Well, yes, happy rebirth, David. This is exciting because it can happen for David. It can happen for Ashley, Justin, and myself. It can happen for you. My final takeaway, I think, is this, because there's they never drank again. This is remember the movie Karate Kid? And the guy was going to his sensei, to his master, why are you having me wax on, wax off? Why are you having me paint? And then all of a sudden the day came when he had to pull all these moves together. If you just read this section of the big book, this one thing, you're not going to get all of it. You need, it's further down. It says, we aren't saints. We're going to read that we will make mistakes. We will read that there will be ups and downs. So when you read here, new friends, and you're like, they never drank again. Hopefully some things you can never do again, or you will die. But in other programs, like my Al-Anon sponsor says, we just do it a little less than we used to, because I'm not a saint, Justin, and I don't want anyone to come in here and think that all of a sudden we're tapping sainthood in here. But now I have a formula and a way to correct it. Because like I said, if you are like us or like me, you have to burn your life into the ground to get one of these books. But when you do get this book, it says it, miracles, strenuous work, and I can have permanent recovery from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikki. Thanks for sharing that. And I'm grateful that I don't have to achieve perfection today, because that's not going to happen. Beautiful. Ashley, what are your takeaways and final thoughts on what we've read and discussed today?
Thank you, Justin. Great episode. I'm so glad to be here and to be able to do this and to carry the message to the addict who still suffers. I think my takeaway is I needed to hear what Nikki said about the reminders. I constantly need reminders myself, and the best way for me to do that is literally when the words come out of my mouth and I'm telling it to somebody else. I usually need to take my own advice or things that I'm recommending. So that's my takeaway.
Ashley, how true is that? Just today, I was on the phone with somebody, and as I was speaking, I was like, oh, I'm holding a mirror right up to myself as I say these words. And it's like I'm talking to myself, and higher power is speaking right through me to that person and right back at me. I love it. All right. And that's also my takeaway, is that I often have to be reminded, whether it's by my own words or by the words of somebody, a sponsee, somebody who has much less time in program or whatever, much less recovery knowledge, speaking back to me and shooting wisdom at me. And it's good stuff. All right. Well, thank you all for joining us. To learn more about RICO 12 and what we are doing and how you can support these projects, please go to RICO12.com, RECO12.com, to learn more about any of the other projects that, and also to learn about any of the other projects that Ashley, David, and Nikki are working on. Check out the links in the show notes of the podcast and get into the work and experience the miracles of recovery. Join us in the fellowship of the Spirit and come trudge this adventurous and amazing road of happy destiny, because dang it, you're worth it. Let's do this.